So for those of you that I've not yet met, my name is Tim Sales. I've been in the network marketing industry for about 30 years. I've made many millions of dollars. I taught a certificate course at the University of Illinois at Chicago, consulted a couple of hundred network marketing companies, and I'm taking all of that experience and that knowledge that I've gained, and I'm basically breaking down the industry into bite-sized pieces so that people can really understand it and properly evaluate it. Having to do with my background, before I got into network marketing, I was in U.S Navy Special Forces. And so my specific job was underwater bomb squad. So when we talk about risk, it's something that I know a little bit about. And we would typically, defuse bombs underwater. We would skydive a lot of times into the locations where we were going to defuse bombs. And so you can look at any of those things and you can say, that's about the most risk you could ever get into. And so I want to share with you that risk is not over there or over there or over there. What do I mean by that? Somebody says, well, motorcycles are risky or dangerous. Those quads, right? They turn over easy, right? They're dangerous. Driving fast is dangerous. All these things that they're putting the onus over there on something else as if that thing is dangerous. No, that is not where risk sits. Risk sits in the lack of training. All right, that's where risk sits. So this is probably not a whole lot to brag about, but I have, I think 13 speeding tickets for over 100 miles an hour on my motorcycle. I know how to control a motorcycle. I know how to control a quad. I know how to control a bomb. I know how to control diving. I know how to control going out of an airplane with a parachute. That's all that it comes down to is somebody's willingness to be trained in a particular area. Now you can flip that around, and a person who is not trained at walking down the street is the most risky person in the world because they're going to step on the edge of the curb and they're going to fall down. All right? And so that's really the primary thing that you have to look at with all of risk is that the risk does not sit over there. The risk sits right here in your willingness to get trained in anything. All right? So, and also risk depends upon outlook. If you really think about it, if you think about the individual who is, let's say, afraid of risk, well, they're afraid of life. All right, so they've basically withdrawn because life has become dangerous to them. And so they're very trepid about everything that they do. They're not in, you can't say they're conservative. No, that wouldn't be what it is. They're fearful. They're just downright fearful. And so I don't really think that there's a place for a person who's fearful in network marketing because you're going to have to learn some things. And fearful people don't think anything works. Okay, so they're not going to they would never even waste the time of training because they're afraid all the time. Okay, so let me dive into a couple of points here. Let's first talk about risk. And I looked in a lot of places to try to find the definition of risk that is actually accurate. And this one just happens to be on Wikipedia. Risk is the possibility of losing something of value. Values. Now, don't let that hang you up. That's the plural of that. Okay? So a lot of people might think of values as what are your values in life or something. No, this is losing something of value. Values can be gained or lost when taking risk resulting from a given action or inaction. Now, the reason that I use this definition and no other definition is this is the only one that stated that inaction can also be risky. Most people think of action being risky, but in my experience, no, it's the opposite. Inaction is the most risky thing. Risk can also be defined as the intentional interaction with uncertainty. Welcome to what a game is. That's what a game is, and isn't life a game? Right? So that is the definition of it. Risk is most often viewed from the perspective of losing, and that is why few people get what they want in life. So there's a very famous in my household conversation that went down, and so I had I'd had a few girlfriends, and they, I think my oldest son said it best. He said, I said, are you thinking about marrying this girl? And he's like, no, she'll do for now, right? In other words, it was one of those things where it was easiest to date whoever that person was, even though he knew that she wasn't who he really wanted, right? And so I had done the same thing when I was younger. And but I always had this vision of this girl who was, in the Led Zeppelin song, queen of all my dreams. And so I met her. Okay, it was at an event or something like that. It wasn't in network marketing; it was somewhere else, and I knew it. Like, it was one of those kind of moments. And so she was getting ready to leave to go out of town. I had only briefly talked. We were doing a similar thing, and so I had talked to her off and on, but mostly what we were doing were just professionals, and so she was getting ready to leave, and I was like, and I just said it. I just said, "Do you have any interest in having a relationship?" And so it was so awkward. You just can't even believe that moment. It's called the driveway conversation in our house. And it was probably the scariest thing I've ever done in my whole life, including Bomb Squad. She's now my wife. What if I didn't do that? What if I didn't take that step? Right? That is inaction, because I knew there was something that I wanted in a relationship, and I hadn't had it. And so I was willing to go into action, but the inaction was, that would have been detrimental to what I wanted in my life. And that is the biggest crime I think you can commit against yourself, is to not go after what you want in life. Okay, so that was certainly a good thing to do, even though it was very, very risky. But what was really at risk? What was really at risk? If I didn't have that conversation, then the answer was already no, right? If I didn't create an awkward scene, there's no way if that could have went down cool, right? Like, we didn't really even know each other. And so there was no way for me to have that, but how else could I say it? Okay? So yeah, that's my definition of risk right there. Okay? All right. So I think all risk evaluation should start at this. Okay? You've seen some of this, and I'm going to dig into it a little bit more, but a risk evaluation needs to start with, what do you want? So determine actual and future expenses. Okay, so this is having to do with money, but it has to do with almost everything in life here. So, and your future expenses, you need to fund that from every paycheck that you ever get. So when we're talking about savings, we're talking about retirement, every check that you ever get in your life, you need to allocate some towards savings and some towards retirement. All right? And so here's the way this thing goes, and I'm going to give you kind of personal story on me on how this goes down. So number one, desired lifestyle. What does that mean? That means your time. It means your freedom. It means like where you choose to buy a house, or where you choose to live. My wife and I, we kind of looked at the world, at least in America anyway, and we just kind of saw it going crazy, and we were like, we don't want to go crazy with them. All right, so we chose to have a farm, an organic farm up in the mountains that's very remote. We have like 1.5 million acres around us. All the snow melt goes down into a valley that flows into the river, runs through our backyard. So we've got the cleanest drinking water in the world, not in the world, in the United States. And, like we grow our own produce. We like organic food. We have our own cows, things like that. So that was the lifestyle that we wanted. Okay, so if you create a lifestyle that you want and it doesn't involve living in a city or doesn't involve certain situations, then you've just limited yourself to the amount of freedom that you actually have. And now you're locked into a particular location because of a job, you see. Food, shelter, electricity, that would be like on the food side. Are you going to buy the cheapest food that is available? Because it's not even food, okay? Like when you really, really break it down, it's not really food. That was important to us. I'm not putting any of this on you. This is about you making decisions on what you want in life. Transportation, what kind of car, how many cars. Education, that's an ongoing thing. You should never stop paying for education. Children, what is the true expense of children? And I'm not talking about having them. I'm talking about having them plus all the clothes and all of the everything, right? And then how much time do you want to spend with your kids? Are you wanting to kind of hand them to a daycare center or, a nanny or something like that? Or do you want to spend time with your kids? How about your spouse? That was one of the things. If I'm going to get the queen of all my dreams, I wanted to be with her. I wanted to work with her. I didn't want to kiss her in the morning and then kiss her when she comes in that evening, right? So we kind of meet in the morning, meet in the evening, right? So I wanted to spend time with this girl. Vacation, how often, where, is it going to be on, just a standard Carnival cruise, or is it going to be something that's, like really spectacular so you can travel and see the whole world? Savings, and this has to do with the months and years of freedom. So you just kind of sit down and say, okay, if I didn't have any income coming in, how long could I live? Right? So if there's a catastrophe somewhere, something went down, how long can I live? Right? That's a very important one. That has to do with savings, not retirement. That's savings. And so kind of each month you put away money in savings, and then that will give you, okay, so now if I had to not work for a week, I'd be good. And then if I didn't have to work for a month, I would be good. I'd have enough money, and then it's years and so forth, okay? And so that's true freedom. And then retirement. And then once you've determined this is who you want. So if you don't do this, you're not really living your life. Like I said in another video, it was like, okay, so who's hiring? That was my first question when I got out of high school. Grocery store, Chevron, like things like that. And that's what I was looking to do, but I never sat down and did this part. I did this part in the Navy when I was like wanting to get out of the Navy because I knew I couldn't have a spouse doing what I did and being away the way that I was. So I needed to sit down and say, what do I really want? Okay. All right. And then you find a business or employment that will obtain this. Not who's hiring. No. You want this because I think the biggest risk in all of life is to not have what you want, right? You're here. Make of it what you want, all right? Okay, so there's no risk that really can be evaluated if you've not done this, all right? Because you're always kind of saying, well, what do I want in life? That is what you're basing everything that you do on. All right, so as it relates to network marketing, what's at risk? Money, time, and the life you want. Those are the variables that you're really looking at. All businesses and employment have the risk of going out of business, okay? So that's a part of the risk. And so that's going to require you to do a proper evaluation on the company that you choose. Okay, so you're choosing a long-term partner when you choose a network marketing company. Employment is a risk. If you're untrained, you get fired, right? In other words, if you're not constantly serving your boss or the company, then you're going to get fired. If you don't stay up to date on technology, you're going to get fired. Okay, so this is coming back to risk is not over there. Risk is not the company. Risk is you being not trained or not productive. Network marketing is a risk if you don't learn the pipeline. Okay, so I've talked about this in a couple of other videos. I'll show it to you real quick in a minute. And don't do the pipeline. Okay, so that has to do with production and network marketing. And it's not any different here. So you're going to work either way. Okay? And it's all a risk. And so it comes down to your production is what it all comes down to. And so if you are untrained in anything, it's really, really risky. So now I want to break into a kind of a new concept, all right? And I'm going to give an example of trading stock. So this is Google. And I decided that I was going to buy it right here, 1,000 shares. The stock is really expensive, and so it's a lot of money, but 1,000 shares of a $1,194 stock. Okay, so I bought it at $193. Okay, so right after I buy it, I'm going to then say I'm going to sell it right here. That's $1 below it. And so the downside risk is $1,000. Remember that. Okay, that's the downside risk, $1,000. But what's the upside? Well, if it does what I want it to do, I'm going to sell it right here. And that's going to be at $1,228. And so that means that I'm going to make $35,000 in profit if it gets up there. Okay, well, based upon this daily average move that it typically goes through, then it should only take about 8 days to get there. Okay, so now's the question. Is this a good deal? Is this a risky deal? What's the risk? The risk is $1,000. What's the upside? Risk. Notice the word. What's the upside risk? The upside risk is losing out on $35,000. If I have a $1,000 downside and a $35,000 upside, if I don't do that deal, please go to Home Depot, buy a shovel, and hit me in the head with it. And then hand it to me and say, dig yourself a grave. Okay, that would just be ridiculous. Okay, so just so you know, right there, that was today. That was yesterday when I was making these. This is today, and that's 30. That right there, it hit exactly the mark. Okay, there you go. So I spent $1,200 7 years ago. All right, $1,200 to get into a network marketing company. That wasn't what it cost to get into the company. It was $30 to get into the company, but I bought the products. Okay, so what's the downside risk? Well, the company would have bought those products back from me in 30 days, so I didn't even really have the $1,200 risk. So what's the risk with the $30? The upside, I've made many millions of dollars. Again, if I wouldn't have taken that deal, that would have been stupid, really, really stupid. Okay, so and this is really learn and think about this. Okay, the most amount of money you will ever lose is the amount you will never make due to lack of action. Everybody that I ever hear talk about risk, they're worried about what they're going to lose. That is not ever what you need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about what can I lose by not doing the deal. Okay, so that is what we call upside risk, the risk of not earning what you could. Okay? This is the pipeline, and so this is going to determine whether or not network marketing is risky to you or risky to me. Okay, so now the pipeline is every business in the world, every organization in the world, and I'm talking about all organizations, colleges trying to get students into their college. I'm talking about religions and churches trying to get people into the congregation. I'm talking about politicians trying to get votes. Every single thing in the world, if it's an organization and it needs to expand, this is the formula. And so don't think network marketing is different. It's not. So you got to generate leads. You got to contact the person. You've got to set an appointment. This is sometimes. Other times, if they're walking into a store, you don't need to set an appointment with them. Okay, so you generated a lead by having a nice, storefront on Broadway Street, and so you don't have to necessarily go out and run advertisements. You can, you should. Okay, but they come into your store. You don't have to set an appointment. You're going to immediately do a presentation with them. Okay, and then you follow up. In network marketing, it works just this way right here. So what was my risk in spending the $1,200? It's whether or not I know this. Just like I talk about with a motorcycle. Motorcycle is risky if you don't know how to ride, don't know how to control the bike. Bombs are risky if you don't know how to control the bomb. Network marketing is risky if you don't know these. And so back here, when I showed you this and I said, hit me with a shovel if I don't do it. If I can spend $1,200 and make millions, I was retired, by the way, for the first time that I built a network marketing business. I built it for 5 years. 2.5 years of that was part-time, and then I went full-time, and I had a 6-figure monthly income when I quit. Okay, and when I say I quit, I retired. I had an 18-year residual income. So all I had to do at that time was to learn these steps. Do these steps. And by learning and doing, I got better and better and better and better and better at it. And so it's no risk when you know it. It's no risk when you absolutely, know what you're doing and you do it. All right? So in summary, the risk of money, very low compared to the upside potential. All right, so if you want to go into a traditional business, I think the average SBA loan is something like $350,000. And so if you don't make it work, that was a lot of risk because you're now going to be bankrupt, right? And so very low. Time, very low. I did part-time while I was in the Navy. Got up to over $60,000 a month part-time. So yeah. It's low risk. The life you want, all right? So this is a risk, right? I've never seen a better situation than network marketing. There are people who make more money than me in a lot of areas. But I don't know of a lot of people who have a better life, right? In other words, like doing what I want and when I want. And I want everybody in the world to do this. I want everybody in the world to experience that kind of life because it's really, when you have it, it is so awesome. Like you wake up every morning and you just can't even believe it. It's like pinch your life, right? To wake you up. And I also just added this one here, which is there's a risk of being average. Is network marketing risky? That's what we're going to talk about today. I think it's the most risky of all. And right now, the average person in America, 69% of them have a. So for those of you that have not yet met, my name is Tim Sales. I've been in the network marketing industry for about 30 years. I've made many millions of dollars. I taught one catastrophe away, one, broken down car, one broken down shower or water heater or something like that. University of Illinois at Chicago. Consulted a couple of hundred network marketing companies, and I'm taking all of that experience and that knowledge that I've gained. So that is, I think that is the biggest risk there is right now. Okay, so if you know the pipeline and you do breaking down the industry into bite-sized pieces so that people can really understand it and properly evaluate it. Having to do with my background, marketing is a very low risk. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I will see you in the next video. If you like this video, comment down below. Before I got into network marketing, I was in U.S. Navy Special Forces. And so my specific job was underwater bomb squad. And do ask any questions about this or anything else, because I love to go in and read them. Thanks so much. About risk, it's something that I know a little bit about. And we would typically, defuse bombs underwater. We would skydive a lot of times where we were going to defuse bombs. And so you can look at any of those things and you can say, that's about the most risk you could ever get into. And so